Hi, welcome to Go Tell Mom. I'm Diana Kelly, and I've been momming for several decades, including tending my fur babies, kids I gave birth to, kids I mentored as a broadcaster and college instructor, my kids' friends, and my friends. I'm not a psychologist or doctor, but I do know how to dig up advice from those who are, and that's what I'll share with you. If you have something to share with me, remark, comment, question, please comment below. When I was a kid, there was no YouTube or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. If kids wanted to send a message to another kid, it was usually a note passed in class and occasionally caught by the teacher. I know this from experience. Now, kids as young as 8 are passing their notes through social media, according to the New York Times. In fact, there was a 17% increase during the pandemic. My own kids had barely hit Facebook's minimum age limit of 13 when it started to take off among their peers. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Snapchat still have that minimum age limit, even though younger kids may have phones. My rule with my kids was your password is my password. In other words, I have to be able to get into your social media account. My biggest fear was that they'd be bullied, even by kids they didn't friend. If that was happening, I wanted to know, so I'd peek on their pages to make sure everything was okay. Facebook was their newspaper in a way. They'd post pictures of their friends and classmates at events and at games, at shows, and congratulate everyone on whatever benchmark they'd hit. For the most part, there wasn't much to worry about. Of course, there are plenty of anti-Facebook folks who will tell you it's now a dying platform, but it's still on everyone's phone, and it's still considered the biggest of the social media platforms. TikTok and Instagram have more traction among teens at this point, and YouTube is becoming a big player. But the question is social media good for our kids? Both of my children, who are in their 20s now, have deleted most of their social media accounts. They didn't want the drama, and I suspect they've been hurt once or twice along the way, especially after they hit the age where mom let them change their passwords. Social media has become a big part of creative and social life for preteens and teens, according to raisingchildren.net. Preteens and teenagers use social media to have fun, make and maintain friendships, share and learn interests, explore identities, and develop relationships with family. It's an extension of their offline and face-to-face interactions. For older teenagers especially, it's often a key part of how they connect with friends. Think about it. Most kids have packed schedules between classes and clubs and sports and recitals. If you're a kid and you don't have another kid's phone number so you can text, you can get a hold of them by a social media account. That's handy if there's a schedule you both need to meet and you misplaced yours. My kids' schedules were always pinned to the refrigerator door. I've since been told that's not cool by those same children. It's also handy if you have questions about homework or an assignment to be on social media. On the flip side, there's the creative element the kids can indulge in, putting together a montage of backstage photos from a school play or video of someone taking the winning shot at a basketball game. Teens will share those photos and videos on their pages. In fact, I used to shoot a lot of video for my daughter's lacrosse games, and other parents appreciated it when I posted it. Psychologists say social media can help kids feel like part of the pack because they can meet others like them and build relationships they might not otherwise have. That's particularly helpful for kids who feel marginalized because they're from racial, ethnic, and gender minorities. Not feeling alone can be an important part of growing up, but it may get them addicted to their screens. The American Psychological Association says when kids hit puberty, they begin to crave social rewards, such as visibility, attention, and positive feedback from peers. And they don't know when to stop feeding that urge. New research shows over 50% of teens report at least one symptom of clinical dependency on social media. Yeah, that doesn't sound dangerous at all. APA members recommended Congress require social media platforms develop tools to disable particularly addictive features for youth. RaisingChildren.net points out that when teens and tweens are online, they can be exposed to too much targeted advertising and marketing. They can also be exposed to inappropriate, embarrassing, or violent content from folks who are not kids. And then there's the issue of cyberbullying. That's defined as intentionally hurtful messages, spreading rumors, sending images or videos to embarrass someone, or using fake profiles to embarrass or intimidate someone. When I was a news director in Iowa, there were 6 kids who were bullied online and took their own lives. RaisingChildren.net suggests creating a family media plan with some written guidelines so that if kids are bullied, they know they have backup. Part of the guidelines should include not sharing personal information like phone numbers or birth dates on their profiles or in quizzes online. Also stress they need to block and report people they don't know who post upsetting content and accept friend requests only from people they do know. Most of all, they should talk to a trusted adult if they see something that upsets them. Some counselors suggest setting screen limits as part of their family tech plan. Depending on the age, perhaps younger kids can watch YouTube only when a parent's in the room with them, for instance. As far as what they post, parents should stress the importance of thinking before posting. Do not upload or share inappropriate messages, images, and video, and ask their friends if it's okay to post before they post pictures of them. That's just common courtesy. One more point to share about social media posting. It's hard to get rid of. If you post something unkind, inappropriate, prejudicial, or slanderous, you might find it bites you in the butt when you grow up. Lara Neves from OverstuffedLife.com points to a group of students who had their acceptance offers to Harvard rescinded because they created a private Facebook chat where they exchanged inappropriate memes with each other. Harvard found out about it. The school where Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook. Neves adds, "We're handing phones to 13 and 14-year-olds because we want to keep track of them. Yet we are forgetting that we're handing a pretty powerful little device to a teenager with an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that forms judgments, weighs decisions, and controls impulses." One of my broadcasting mentors, Mike McVeigh, says he always looks through the social media profiles of people he's considering hiring or recommending to clients. Tennessee Tech posts warning flyers on its bulletin boards telling students potential employers will check them out online. It's not safe to be cavalier about what you post. Plenty of adults have learned that the hard way. Dr. Sherry Walsh is joining me, and you have done so much teaching students about social media, especially in the last year. So I figured this was kind of your jam. This would be your jam, talking about kids socializing on the web. What would you suggest for parents to do proactively when it comes to getting them, because they're going to be involved with social media at some point?
So for my family, what we did was, we talked about it first. So certainly my kids are now, out of college now, but when they first wanted to get their own phone and then get onto social media, we talked a lot about, what were they going to be doing on it? What were their friends using it for? Yep. And honestly, at the time, learning about them myself. Like, I didn't know about these platforms, and my kids would come home and say that they wanted to get on whatever platform it was at the time.
So you naturally, being the astute teacher that you are, went in and studied all of this, right?
Yeah, did some research about what the app was for and how students were using it and what that looked like. And then we adopted the policy to trust our kids, but I guess trust with verification, right? So we have a family password, which we still use for Netflix and some of the other things that we're probably not supposed to be sharing. But we have a family password that the kids all used on all their social media. Mm-hmm. And although I never checked them, every once in a while, I would ask them what's on your page, or what are you looking at, and they would share it and take a look at it. So we kind of went that direction with social media, and that seemed to work really well for my kids. But my kids were not the sneaky kind of kids, and I know that there are different types of kids, right? So and my kids were very not that they didn't do things without me knowing. I'm not that naive, but they were very upfront with a lot of the things that they would do. So they would tell me, this is the social media that they're on, this is what they're using it for, and this is why they want it. And that seemed to work out really well in the very beginning. And then honestly, after that point, they just did whatever they wanted to do. And our rule was always that they had to use the same password. So it was a family password. They had to have it for their laptop, for their phones, so that at any time, if any of us wanted to get into any account, we could.
That was the rule in my house too. It's like, your password is my password.
Yeah.
It has to be. And at first they looked at me like, I said, honey, I don't want to hear you crying in your room because somebody put something nasty on whatever platform you're on. I want to be able able to check on that. And I want to be able to show you how to block this kind of stuff. And I learned myself how to do that so that I could show them. Because kids are kids, especially teenage girls.
Yes.
And they might post something that was harmful or hurtful or whatever. And as the mama bear that I am when it comes to my kids, I would check to make sure that none of this was happening. And after a while, my daughter would just say to me, I'm not really into Facebook anymore. I'm on Snapchat. And I worry about things like Snapchat, though, because I think it's easy for kids to throw things out there that are not as well-intentioned as they should be, and it vanishes, although there were cases where people would take a screenshot of something they saw on Snapchat. So that kind of vanished with the use of Snapchat so much, I think. But I would worry about that with my kids being bullied, because there was a little bit of that went on with them when they were younger, before social media. Then we moved to Tennessee, and it didn't seem to be a problem, but I would always worry, because kids are exposed to so much that maybe they shouldn't be on social media, and then they comment, and that turns into back and forth conversations that maybe they shouldn't be having, and it may not always be with kids their own age, too, and that was also a concern of mine.
Yes, I remember. I think one of our very first forays into social media was with Club Penguin. I don't know if your kids ever did that. That was like way back in the day. Oh. And it was like a video game, but it allowed for chat. So it had a chat feature into the game. And so that was kind of like our beginning conversation with how people aren't always who they say they are and what that looks like. And we had a couple of incidences, I think, early on that allowed us to have some really good conversations with our children about what was happening. Some of them involved my own children. So when one of my kids was in middle school, her and a small group of friends recorded an unflattering video of a fellow student and posted it and made some comments, and it provided us an opportunity to talk through that about why that's not appropriate and what happens. And my daughter was not exactly in with the friend group, so she didn't exactly participate. She wasn't there when it happened, but it was her friend group that it happened to. And some of those students got, suspended for a day or two. She didn't, because she wasn't there, but it really was eye-opening to her and to her sister about, like, this is serious. Like, there are serious ramifications about what you choose to say and do on social media. And it's lucky for her that she wasn't intimately involved in it, but it really was eye-opening to see her friends have these circumstances and these outcomes show up that, she was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to be leery of what I say and what that is like and all of that. And that was definitely eye-opening for them. And then we also had another friend of theirs that had gotten kind of, I guess, catfished-ish by an older predatory man, and nothing bad happened of it per se, but it was certainly eye-opening where her friend was chatting with someone who's supposed to be someone her age. Of course, they asked to meet them in person. They did, but not, thankfully, alone. And so there was a group of kids that went. It turned out not to be another kid. They all kind of freaked out. They all kind of left. And again, it just opened us up to a conversation about, I'm glad that worked out for us in that situation, but this is what happens.
And let's take precautions.
Yes, and this is not just what Hollywood is telling you happens. This isn't just in the movies or on a television show. This is real life, and this is what really happens. And so I was thankful for those relatively benign things that happened early on that allowed us to talk about how dangerous the internet was without it coming from me. Like, it wasn't like, your mom is telling you, don't do this.
And it's hard when you're a parent, when you know that there's danger out there. And bona fide danger out there, not just in mommy's head. I can do that on my own without any help. And having kids take you seriously. So having something like that, I hate to say it was a good thing, but in a way, I'm sure for you and the other parents that were involved in that group of kids, it was one of those, okay, here's your warning sign. And sometimes kids need that just to take it seriously.
Yeah, I do. I think so. I mean, it turned out to be a whole thing with the school. We brought people in. They had an assembly. I mean, it was a big thing. It was a big deal because it certainly could have turned out a lot worse. And I was very thankful that, the kids trusted the adults in their lives to talk about it and to tell us what was going on. But it also provided us a platform to talk to the rest of the student body about it. Because, this was, it was, a while ago. They were in middle school. And for most kids at that age, they were just getting into social media.
Same with mine.
And it was a good opening to have those conversations. And I think now it's pretty regular that schools talk about social media and they talk about the dangers filters and they do all of that.
And there's always a social media policy, it seems, that's put in the student handbook.
Yeah, something, but at the time when my kids were going through it, they were one of that first younger generation using it, and they didn't have that. They didn't have the opportunities for them. So I was very thankful that, at least for us in the city that we live in, that they were able to kind of start something to help all the students and talk about it and make it a learning experience for everybody. But definitely, I think it changed their perspective on what social media is. And I was never super worried about bullying itself. I was more, and I still am, very worried just about how social media changes our perception of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to disassociate between what is fake or staged and what you see in social media versus what real life is like, and how that can just alter what you think of yourself, your body, your physical attributes, any of that stuff. And that's the part that always really worried me, especially because I'm a mother of 2 girls. And so I was always very concerned about it.
Yeah. I mean, you look at some of the pictures that are up there and you have to calmly tell your kids, that's not what they really look like. There's a filter on there. And once you get really savvy, then you can tell them, oh yeah, that looks a little off. They put in something to make their eyes look bigger, because there are filters like that. So it's not the real person you're seeing a lot of the time. I mean, my daughter doesn't like to have any pictures of herself up on social media. And I think that's sad, because if we've got a family gathering or something, I've got family scattered across the country, and they'll look on my Facebook page to see pictures of the kids, and I can't do that anymore because she doesn't want that.
Yeah.
My son doesn't care. My son could care less. But my son closed down his Facebook page. He's like, I never use it, Mom. But he's gaming a lot. And people don't realize gaming is kind of a form of social media these days, because you're interacting with each other and you are sending messages back and forth. It's all live streamed, so it's like live social media all the time.
I know my sister, her kids do a lot on Discord, and they had some issues with, I guess, bullying, if you want to call it that. But he broke up with his girlfriend. He's in middle school, and so he broke up with his girlfriend. And then there was the friend groups, like who goes with which friend, like which kids are going to hang out with the boy versus hang out with his ex-girlfriend now. And there was a little bit of heated discussion that was going on through it, and it was happening on Discord, and something that was just a challenge for them to navigate and to figure out how do they go through it. But they were able to. But again, it was like things that you just don't think about. It's like things are so public now.
Yeah,
I think back in the day when we would make our stupid mistakes, and I have made many of them growing
Likewise.
up. that no one else knew about them. So like if you didn't share them, no one would know, and it didn't. No one was privy to that embarrassing moment or whatever it is. And now it's just with social media, it's out there
all the time
for the world to see, for your friends to see, and for people to respond to, and it's just very different.
Now I warn my students frequently, watch what you post, watch what you post, watch what you post. And I point to Hartley Sawyer, who was one of my favorite characters on The Flash, and he had posted something like a decade ago before he really got famous or whatever that was really stupid, and he said, I was a different person then. I was just getting my feet wet in the industry, and I threw things out there to throw things out there. And he wound up losing his job on The Flash when that came to light. He made a huge mea culpa and said, this is not the way I am now. This is not the person I am right now. But I check IMDb every once in a while, and he hasn't had a gig since then.
Yeah.
And that was 2 years ago. James Gunn, although he's had quite the redemption. But in this case, he was kicked off of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, that project, because he had put something stupid when he was young, and the same thing. And he's like, look, it's not what I believe. It's not what I think now. I was doing it to get attention. A lot of people, especially entertainers, were doing that way back when Twitter was first starting and all that, and they'd put stupid stuff up.
Well, because controversy gets likes and gets follows and gets...
Exactly.
And it changes the numbers, the dynamics, the algorithm, all of those things. And so you certainly have a whole new generation of influencers who are trying to carve out that space. Mm-hmm. And sadly, the easiest and fastest way to carve out that space is to be controversial.
Yeah, and to throw something out there that's got people saying, what?
Yep, and they don't realize the implications that could have further down the road, and it's hard. And you certainly do, and you see that a lot where people will, dox people. They'll come up and they'll find information about them and publicize it. Sometimes, of course, they're publicizing things could hurt other people, like they publish like their address and where they live and all that. But a lot of times they're pulling up stuff from like their high school and saying this is who this person used to be, and it's hard.
Let me ask you, do you think your students today are like they were when they were freshmen in high school?
Like in terms of their own
their personalities?
Oh, no. Yeah. I think that they have changed. And so it definitely has that, where do you draw the line, right, between allowing people to grow and change versus also holding them accountable for the things that they said that were hurtful or damaging to oftentimes marginalized people and groups, right? So it's like, how do you make both of those things happen at the same time?
Yeah.
And it's definitely hard to navigate those waters and to explain to students why it matters what they post and who they are. And oftentimes they think they know who they are. So they think that, this is who I am. I want to say these things because this is what I believe. And all
their
honesty,
beliefs can drastically change in the course of 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even think about 20, 30, 40 years from now, how drastically different their lives will be and who they will be as a person. But once you post it, right, it's out there forever.
Yeah.
And it is always there.
And they don't realize that. My mom used to say, don't ever put something in print, and she didn't specify what kind of print, that you wouldn't want on the front page of the New York Times.
Yeah.
And I think about that now, especially when I hear about people that are getting blasted or losing their careers or losing jobs because of what they posted. And I thought my mom was ahead of her time 40 years ago. So
definitely, because it's hard. And then they think of those social media comments as just what I would say to somebody, which sometimes we say things that we don't always mean, and we misspeak and we say things and it goes away. But they see that social media, that texting, that posting on Twitter, whatever that is, as the same because it has that same type of interaction. But it's not the same, and it is forever there. And that Gen Z, the Alpha group, those younger generations are coming up in a world where they will only know social media. Their whole life will be centered around whatever's new at the time, right? And it will be interesting to see how things are different with it.
I suspect son-in-law to be by now, because they just went off for a vacation where he was supposed to be proposing to her. But he works in cybersecurity, and he told her, get off of everything, because they can steal your identity and all that. So, I mean, she texts and she'll post things for her company when she's asked to, but she does not have any social media of her own. She asked me not to post any pictures of her on my social media, and I thought that was a little bit extreme. I mean, there's got to be a happy medium in there somewhere, But
I don't know. I think like everything, right? It comes in waves. So, right, we didn't have it, then we had it, everybody was on it, then they realized it wasn't always for good, and then so then there was kind of that backlash, and people are getting off of it, and who knows what the metaverse is going to do, and all the other things that are coming. But I think that that there will be a new wave of a new set of social media, or just ways to interact. I mean, I can't even imagine my life now without the internet, even though that's not necessarily social media, but just life in general without the internet. And of course, I was born before the internet was there. I went to school before the internet was there, and I lived my life just fine. And so I'm sure it's going to be the same thing for that younger generation. Like there won't be a time where they didn't know it. It might look different, and maybe there'll be better securities around it.
That would be good,
But I think it's always going to be there. I think we have to just learn how to navigate it.
What do you think are some of the positives for kids with social media?
Mostly, I think it allows for connectivity when you don't always have that connectivity. So I think that it allows you to see into worlds that you would never be privy to. So like what's happening in India or something that's going on in France or something like that, where you may never have that opportunity to travel. Maybe you do, maybe you're lucky, but maybe you don't, but you still can see how life is like somewhere that is so different than your own. And it could even just be within the United States, from Tennessee to California to Michigan to, Florida. And I think it allows students to see how similar we are.
That's a good link to make, is to understand how similar we are.
Yeah, that we're all just people trying to live our lives, love the people we want to love, work, eat, and just to be alive. And I think that really helps. I do think, though, on the flip side, though, that because of that interconnectivity, if we don't teach students early, or our own kids early, that it's not always all real, that I think that they see how better someone else's life is going to be, and then try to compare themselves to it. So back in the day, growing up, reality TV was really big for us. And so for me, it was like the Kardashians were, the huge stars. I know they're still around, but not like they were then. But that was huge. And so to see all of that, even though it was on TV, you could change the channel and see something very different. But on social media, especially some of the socials are very much about projecting that perfect image. And so you have to kind of take both, right? It's a double-sided coin, right? So on one hand, you get exposed to all kinds of things you never even knew existed. On the other hand, you have to remember that not everything that's being posted is real.
Exactly.
And so I think schools in general need to do a better job with social media literacy and about understanding what fake news is and all of those things that are happening. And us as parents too, right? To talk about it, to talk about, well, where'd you find that information? And well, who said it? And is that, really accurate? And keeping up with all of those things.
Yeah, because I would ask, my son would come up with some weird ideas, and I'd say, where'd you find that? And he'd throw a particular link at me, and I'd say, and then I'd share what I knew about that link with him, and it's good. It's good to have those kind of conversations with your kids, I think.
I think so. I think it's good because you get to help them kind of figure out how to get from a consumer of information to a fact checker of information to be able to articulate their own thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's all part of the process. We're always going to be inundated with information. It will never be like it was, where there's just one newspaper that's printed once a month or once a week or whatever that looks like. And that's all the information you got. It will never be like that again until the apocalypse comes. But, until then, till the zombies are around.
I don't want to be around for that personally, but that,
so we have to teach them how to consume all of that and how to digest it in a way that makes sense.
I think I have seen Surviving a Zombie Apocalypse TikTok somewhere.
That happens to be my favorite genre of movies. I watch everything that has to do with the apocalypse.
Oh, man.
I don't want to be there when it happens.
But it's fascinating to see what will happen to the people who are.
It is. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Go Tell Mom, where we chew on stuff that you talk about with your mom, or maybe not. I'm Diana Kelly. If there's something you want brought up, something you want to add, comment below, and I'll be back next week.